Well, good morning. Hope your Sunday is off to a great start. I'm glad you could be with us this morning because we have a very interesting conversation coming up with Michigan's Attorney General. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Now, here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, Bill Schuette was first elected Michigan Attorney General in 2010 and re-elected to a second term in 2014. Prior to this assignment, he served as a United States Congressman, Director of the Michigan Department of Agriculture, Michigan State Senator, and as a judge of the Michigan Court of Appeals. He is the only Attorney General in Michigan history to have served in the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of state government. He has a lot of issues on his plate right now, including an investigation into the Flint water crisis and protecting the Great Lakes. We're pleased he could join us for today's conversation. Thanks for joining us again.
Well, Don, thank you very much, and good morning to you and our listening audience. It's great to be back here at TV6, and parenthetically, 60 years of big birthday party for right. TV6. So
you're kind of the same vintage. You're in that same territory.
Well, I wasn't here at the first broadcast, but it sure is great to be here today. That's to be sure.
You know, I always like to give people a chance to get to know our guests a little better. You're the head of a huge department. We see the Attorney General as one man, but you know, you're dealing with issues from kids to seniors to environment to criminal activity. You know, what's a typical day like for the Attorney General of Michigan?
Well, you know, I have this incredible privilege to serve as the Attorney General of the state of Michigan, and my calling is service, and to be able to serve citizens of Michigan as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer is a huge honor. And I have to tell you, no day is the same. Every day there's a different issue that comes up and has to be determined and addressed and directed towards. So everything from criminal to civil and everything in between, representing the state of Michigan before the federal courts, and making sure, in particular, a big focus of mine has been human trafficking, making sure we examine the sexual assault kits, and then right in the midst of this health crisis in Flint to determine what laws may have been broken. So I've got plenty on my plate, but I work with a great team.
I'm sure that's important. Let's talk about that Flint crisis for a bit.
Sure.
Obviously, this was tragic for the city of Flint, for the people, especially the kids, but it's also really been a real blow to the reputation of the state of Michigan. You're looking at it from the point of, is there some criminal activity here?
Well, that's right. And a month ago, I filed charges against 3 individuals, two employees of the state of Michigan and 1 official from the city of Flint. And these are allegations that are strong. We think they'll stand up under court. And it was, you know, monkeying with figures, arranging data, unfairly, improperly, and with knowing violations of violating the law. So we filed those charges, and it triggered by what you just said. We are now, it's a step forward. We are making the step forward to restoring confidence and faith in Michigan government for families not just in Flint but across the state. That things in the Department of Attorney General and having one system of justice, that's what will happen to the state of Michigan. And you know, there will be more charges to come. This is just the beginning. And the fact is, this is all about the truth. And we'll follow the 2.5 million emails. And one pledge that I'll make here is that we will hold accountable each and every person who may have broken the law of the state of Michigan.
It's an interesting question, you know, looking at it, and I'm sure some people might think about the fact that where do you separate poor performance from doing something illegal if you're an employee of government?
Well, and that's it. There's a continuum of mistake, negligence, gross negligence, an intentional act, or intentionally omitting something, and that's the range that we'll be looking in. And it's just by the book. There are no targets, and no one's off the table as well. But it's all about finding the truth, and that's what justice is all about. And there's one system of justice in Michigan. The game's not rigged. It doesn't matter who you are. There's no escape valve for if you're an important person. Rather, everybody in Michigan deserves one system of justice, and that's what will happen. And the fact is, a lot of things went terribly wrong in Flint, And what you and I take for granted, you know, you get up in the morning, you stumble out of bed, you hop out of bed, crawl out of bed, whatever it is. You have, you know, brush your teeth, have a drink of water, take a shower. That stuff is not normal in Flint. And if you're a young woman who's pregnant, or if there's a newborn infant, you would be very careful. You wouldn't want to bathe in that stuff. And that's really the issue. When you go to a church, and I saw a pastor not long ago, and you go in and there are cases and cases of water in one part of the church, and there are cases and cases of wipes to bathe a young child. And that's the normal of Flint, and we need to restore faith. We need to find out what happened. We will, and then try to rebuild confidence and trust. Doesn't happen overnight.
Just recently, you've asked the state to suspend their investigation. What was the purpose of that?
And that was kind of three lawyers. I, as the Attorney General of the state of Michigan, David Layton, who's the prosecutor in Genesee County, joined in a letter with me, as did Barb McQuaid, who is the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan. And what we didn't want to have occur is anything that would hamper or limit or hinder the criminal investigation. The last thing on earth we want to do, bumping into some other civil investigation, is let the guilty go free. We can't have that. We want to make sure that there's complete justice. And so we said, hey, let's not have any other civil investigations that would impair the integrity of the criminal investigation that I and the Genesee County prosecutor and the United States Attorney for Michigan are doing.
Do you expect any announcements to come out soon as far as what may happen with further charges?
Well, I think we'll see something soon, capital S, capital O, capital N. Not that I couldn't reveal all the trial strategy here on TV6 as much as I'd like, but yeah, more to come on that. And the fact is, this will be far-ranging and thorough, and it'll be fair, and the chips fall where they may. And frankly, that's what everybody deserves and what everybody expects from the Office of the Attorney General.
Okay, I have more questions to come too. We'll get to those in just a couple of minutes. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. We're pleased to have with us this morning Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette. Let's talk about law enforcement a little bit. I know you're a strong advocate for victims' rights, but and also for strong police forces. There's a recent article in Bridge magazine talked about the fact that in Michigan we've reduced police forces more than any other Midwestern state. Are you aware of that, and are you concerned about that?
Well, I know the statistics sometimes are fast and furious, so to speak, but the prosecuting attorneys of the state of Michigan, the cops and the sheriff and I we work together closely like peanut butter and jelly, my favorite sandwich. And the fact is, what people want and deserve, and is stated in the Michigan Constitution, Article 1 of our Constitution talks about public safety. And people want to have safe streets, they want to have secure neighborhoods, and they want to make sure schools are places of learning, not violence. And that's what I'm dedicated to. And the key thing is we want to make sure we have an efficient prison system that's run in a matter-of-fact fashion, conscious to the taxpayers who fund it, and at the same time we need to make sure that there are consequences when you violate the law. And so what we try to do is, and I try to do as the chief law enforcement official of the state of Michigan, is make sure that we have common sense laws, there are consequences when you break the law, and to make sure that our violent offenders stay behind bars. Michigan has the highest criminal rate of any state in the Midwest, I'm sorry to say. And it means that over 70% of the people in prisons today are for violent offenses. And that's really a message. We need to have safety needs to be the first responsibility of government, and I'm dedicated to that.
And I think some of the concern, you know, with police forces being reduced, cities' revenue sharing being reduced, is the fact that are these decisions being made for the right reason? Are they being made only for financial reasons, and are we sacrificing safety or something else to get there?
Well, and I'll be one of the first to, raise my hand in a very vigorous way if there are things that would diminish and impair public safety and our commitment to it. Because, these statistics go on, and you know, there are some folks who say this whole issue where police forces are being disrespected by
Right.
certain leaders across this country, which I think is wrong. You see it in Washington, you see it in major cities, and I'm going to stand by the cops and the firefighters and the sheriffs and the prosecutors, because they occupy this thin line between chaos and safety, between violence and security. And people sometimes don't understand the thin red line that the cops and firefighters do every day so we can be safe.
Right.
And I'm going to stand by them every step of the way.
One of the questions I wanted to ask about that is in trying to reduce corrections costs, there's been something called presumptive parole.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us, well, explain to our audience, first of all, what it is, and is it a good idea or bad?
Well, you know, it's a bad idea, and here's why. Because there's some folks who think with a dashboard or some chart and just do it automatically, that a certain period of time would go by and you want to let a person out. Well, you know what? That just disregards the role of judges and parole boards and prosecutors. We need to look at each one of these decisions in a very careful, safe way. And we want to make sure that the parole boards have that discretion. But some, under this just wanting to save money and disregarding public safety, want to just save bucks without making sure that we provide safety to communities. So I've worked very hard with law enforcement officials to make sure that we have a common sense approach. And let's differentiate between and among violent offenders and nonviolent offenders. And remember, going to prison is not an easy job. Most people in their first felony, they don't go to prison. And you know, people don't go to prison for smoking a joint or stealing a DVD from Barnes & Noble. It doesn't work that way. Again, over 70% of the people in prison today are violent offenders, and we're talking about rapes, murders, assaults, home invasions, the thing you and I and everybody in the listening audience wouldn't want to occur. So we need to make sure we look at violent and nonviolent offenders and not have it just on autopilot or cruise control. That would endanger the safety and security of Michigan families if we had an automatic cruise control just by some dashboard to let people out of prison.
Let's quickly jump to the Great Lakes. The invasive species, Asian carp, are we making progress on that still?
Well, we're making some, and I have to say that we need to do more. You know, the Army Corps of Engineers is so slow. They're slower than a turtle, and you know, they can't for the life of them come up with a plan to have a physical separation, an environmental barrier between the Mississippi River and the Great Lakes. We have, you know, 2/3 of the world's fresh water. It's a huge part of our DNA, and we need to do more and more to stop the migration of the Asian carp into the Great Lakes. That's a key issue. And the other key issue is making sure that we protect the deep waters of the Straits of Mackinac. Mm-hmm. And that's why I've been one of those who've called on a review to make sure we assess the safety of the Line 5 pipeline and to make a safe determination of what options might there be to make sure we still have fuel for the homes in the Upper Peninsula and make sure we keep gas prices down. So it's not an easy thing to do, but we got to make sure we protect the Great Lakes.
Okay. Got some more questions? We'll get back to those in just a minute. Back with more on the Ryan Report after one more break. Once again, we're talking this morning with Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette. A lot of questions, not much time to cover them all. You know, one of the things right now is the issue of the transgender bathroom issue, which some attorney generals have taken to court. Where does Michigan stand on this issue? Where do you stand on this issue?
Well, I sent a letter to United States Attorney General Lynch and also the Secretary of the Department of Education, asking them to retract and rescind the letter, this directive, these suggestions and guidelines for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a classic example of the federal government overreaching and making a determination that should be for parents and families and states. Number two, parents were totally disregarded, not included in these whole approaches and guidelines. And number three, because of that letter should be rescinded. And this is a subject that, you know, frankly, states and parents need to be involved and engaged. And I think one of the paramount points, Don, is that nobody should be discriminated against, and every child, no matter what your persuasion might be, needs to be treated with care, dignity, and respect. And that's what people deserve. And these decisions and how you formulate a plan is best done by local school districts, making sure parents are engaged, and that it be done by states. And this is a conversation we all have to have, but trying to impose it from on high, so to speak, is not the proper way. So I've wrote that letter hoping that they would rescind and retract that letter. And then there'll be more other decisions to be made legally about lawsuits, what have you. And so it's a big, important conversation, but you know, we have to treat everybody with dignity, and there can be no bullying. We have an OK to Say program in the state of Michigan, which is Michigan School Safety Initiative, and it's all about not bullying people, an opportunity to help folks who feel bullied and have a 24/7, 365 on a, for your Twitter, Facebook, email, 800 number, what have you, to try to help people. And we've saved lives because of the School Safety Initiative with this focus of anti-bullying. So that's an example where Michigan has done an outstanding job taking the lead instead of having the federal government try to impose its will and its values and excluding parents, which is really not the way to go.
Can't let you go without talking politics a little bit.
Well, I'll try.
Could anybody have envisioned, a year or so ago when there were, I don't know, 20 or 25 potential Republican candidates that Donald Trump would be the last man standing? Did you ever envision that?
You know, I did not. I used to say this is like, Mad Max and the Thunderdome. 17 enter, one person leaves, and now it's Donald Trump. Now, I'm not going to turn the keys to America over to Hillary Clinton. I'm going to support the Republican nominee, and that's going to be Donald Trump, because the stakes are so high. Supreme Court justices. We can't have a Europeanization of the American economy, which is the Obama-Clinton approach of more taxes, more rules, more regulation. And you know what? We need to have a United States defensive capability where our allies trust us and our adversaries fear us. That's not occurring today because of the mismanagement of the Obama foreign policy issue. So we need to have an America where we're strong militarily, and we have a country of paychecks and jobs, because a lot of families, maybe some here listening, are concerned about, will our children or grandchildren have the same opportunity for a job, a paycheck that we had? That's really the issue of 2016, and I think it's going to be a big Republican year.
Do you buy into the discussion that probably a lot of this is a reaction from the public to what's gone on in Washington and dissatisfaction with the status quo in the nation's capital?
Without a doubt. The fact of we've had 8 years of an Obama administration that has really put a weight on the economy, jobs and paychecks, and people are frustrated and frankly fearful that the economy is really not getting better, and it's very idle, so to speak, and that in terms of America's stature overseas, we have the Russians ruling the skies in the Middle East, which has caused fear and worry. And it's all about the failure of the Obama administration, and people don't want 8 more years of an Obama-Clinton administration.
We have less than 30 seconds. Is there a Bill Schuette gubernatorial race in the future? 2 years away, right?
I appreciate your encouragement. First, we got to do 2016, elect our Republicans in the Michigan House of Representatives, Justices Viviano and Larson in the Supreme Court. Oh, and make sure we have a Republican here in this 1st Congressional District. When we get all that done, I'll come back and we'll talk some more.
Okay. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Good being with you.
Always good to talk with you.
Thank you,
Thanks
Don.
very much. Our guest this morning, Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette. I'll be back with some additional thoughts for you after we take a break. Well, as I've mentioned before, this year TV6 is celebrating its 60th anniversary. In the grand scheme of things, 60 years might not seem like a long time, but in the world of television, it really is. The fact is, what happened 60 years ago really was something special. Television entertains us, it keeps us informed, and has a big impact on our lives. But television is also a business. The only way we get to do all the things we do is by selling advertising to bring in the revenue to pay for the people and the equipment we need to do our job. Those advertisers are willing to provide that revenue because we can help them tell their story to a large audience. Now, with that thought in mind, Think back for a moment to 1955, 1956. I know that some of you weren't around back then, but that's when a Marquette businessman named Frank Russell, who was already familiar with the media business as the owner of the Mining Journal and WDMJ Radio in Marquette, as well as newspapers and radio stations in Iron Mountain and Escanaba, decided to open a television station in Upper Michigan. Now, even for a man of his financial stature, putting a television station on the air was a major challenge. It was a huge financial investment. It meant getting to know a whole new business. But there was an even bigger challenge. When TV6, WDMJ TV, as it was known back then, went on the air, there was no television in Upper Michigan. Worse than that, there were no television sets in Upper Michigan. How do you sell television advertising? How do you deliver an audience for an advertiser when hardly anyone owns a television set? Needless to say, it would be slow going at the start. But they did it. They got the station on the air, and we've been on ever since. TV6 introduced television to Upper Michigan, and the station and the viewers learned about this new media together. And that's one of the important reasons why there's always been this special bond between TV6 and the communities we serve. More than just the usual relationship between a TV station and a community. We've been through a lot together, and it all began with a man named Frank Russell. You know, 1 year after the station went on the air, there was a testimonial dinner for Russell that brought together key leaders from across the Upper Peninsula. In a letter written to Russell for that event, noted Ishpeming Supreme Court Justice and author John Volker wrote, "As one old prospector to another, I add my congratulations. Frank, because you've been smart enough or lucky enough, probably both, to realize early that any fool can make money, but that the big trick is to learn to spend it so that one small corner of the world is somehow a less dismal place. That you have done, and done well, for our rugged native UP, which you and I love so well." Those were the words of John Volker, and let me add this thought. Thanks to the foresight and dedication of Frank Russell and those around him, this year we can celebrate an enduring relationship between TV6 and the Upper Michigan community. May that partnership continue for many years into the future. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Well, that's our show for this morning. Thanks to Attorney General Bill Schuette for joining us and providing an update on a number of major issues in Michigan. Remember, if you want to watch the show again or recommend it to someone else, it will be available on the internet. Check it out at uppermichigansource.com. The most recent show is usually available starting on Monday afternoon. Hope you have a great day coming up. Thanks for joining us today, and I'm counting on seeing you again next Sunday morning.